My name is Rebecca. 3 nights ago, at my mom's birthday dinner, my niece tugged at my wrist, looked straight at my watch, and said, "Grandpa says it's fake," before dropping it into her Sprite like she was showing off a magic trick. And then my entire family laughed. Not nervous laughter, not shocked laughter, real laughter. The kind that fills a room and tells you exactly where you stand. The dinner was supposed to be simple. Just close family, steaks, wine, and the cake I'd driven across town to pick up from my mom's favorite bakery. I even put together a photo slideshow for her, digitizing old pictures from boxes in storage, some so damaged I paid to have them restored. I didn't mind. I thought it would mean something. For years, I'd been the one who made sure things like this happened. Birthdays, anniversaries, emergencies. I was the yes person, the fixer, the quiet constant. Ryan and Tiffany arrived dressed like they were going to a gala, not a family dinner. Their daughter Ellie ran around the table like she owned the place, loud and demanding, already snapping her fingers at waiters, like she'd learned early who mattered and who didn't. No one corrected her. No one ever did. We had just finished the main course. I was sipping my wine, watching my mom smile as a photo of her from 1985 flashed on the screen behind her. For a moment, I felt proud. Proud of the night, proud of her, proud of myself. That's when Ellie came to my side. She tugged at my arm and stared at my wrist. I leaned in slightly, thinking she was curious. Then she said it. "Grandpa says it's fake." Before I could even respond, before anyone at the table could stop her, she dropped my watch straight into her drink. Sprite sloshed over the tablecloth. Ice clinked. There was a single second of silence, just one, and then the room erupted. Ryan doubled over laughing. Tiffany covered her mouth, shaking. My dad didn't even pretend to hide his smile. My mom looked at me with something that wasn't quite laughter, but wasn't disapproval either. No one said Ellie's name sharply. No one told her that was wrong. No one told her you don't destroy someone else's property because of something an adult muttered behind their back. I reached into the glass myself, pulled the watch out sticky and dripping, wrapped it in a napkin, and smiled like everything was fine. I didn't say a word. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't make a scene. That watch wasn't even about the money. I bought it after closing the biggest deal of my career, a 3-year account that came with a 6-figure bonus. It was a milestone, something I did for myself. And apparently, my father had decided it must be fake, and my niece repeated it like gospel. I finished dinner. I paid the bill. I tipped heavily. I hugged my mom. I drove home, and that night, without anger or tears, I opened my banking app and turned off every automatic payment they'd grown used to. The $1,500 monthly transfer for Ryan and Tiffany's SUV lease. Gone. The $400 I sent my mom for groceries and utilities. Gone. The shared cell plan. The streaming services logged into every TV in their houses. All gone. By morning, the panic had already started. By 7:42 a.m., Tiffany called. I didn't answer. She left a voicemail saying something was wrong with the car payment, her voice pitched halfway between confused and offended. By 8 o'clock, Ryan started texting me question marks like that counted as communication. By 9 o'clock, my dad called, then texted when I didn't pick up. I made coffee, ate breakfast, and went about my day like nothing had happened, because for me, nothing had. The decision was already made. By lunch, the tone shifted. Confusion turned into urgency. Urgency turned into expectation. They still hadn't mentioned the dinner. Not the watch, not Ellie, not the laughter, not a single acknowledgement that something might have gone wrong on their end. The only thing that mattered was that the money wasn't moving the way it always did. The next morning, the messages got sharper. Tiffany left a 5-minute voicemail at 6:58 a.m. I didn't listen past the first line, which started with, "I'm just trying to understand what the hell you think you're doing." Ryan followed at 8:14 with, "Not cool, Beck." He went on about how I'd blindsided them, how I knew they depended on that SUV, how irresponsible it was to cut things off without warning. There was no apology anywhere in it, no mention of Ellie's behavior, no attempt to smooth anything over, just entitlement dressed up as concern. The part that stunned me wasn't the anger. It was the assumption. They truly believed the money would come back on if they were loud enough. That this was a tantrum I'd eventually get over. They still hadn't grasped that I wasn't punishing them. I was exiting. What they didn't realize was that I spent the entire night after the dinner going through everything I had ever paid for. Every quiet transfer, every emergency I'd handled without making noise. I wasn't just helping out occasionally. I was the infrastructure holding their lives together. The SUV lease was under my name. I made the down payment. I passed the credit checks. I co-signed because Ryan alone wouldn't have made it past the first desk at the dealership. They'd forgotten that. Or maybe they'd never really noticed. I made one call that morning. Just one. The leasing company answered on the second ring. I told them I was voluntarily surrendering the vehicle. I gave them the address, the hours it was usually parked on the street, and signed the digital form while sipping my coffee. They said a tow truck would be there within 5 business days. I thanked them and hung up. The car they loved so much would be gone by the weekend. The group chat started boiling by noon. I hadn't checked it in months, not since it devolved into wedding photos, parenting debates, and my mom's minion memes. But Lily started sending me screenshots. Tiffany wrote that she couldn't believe I'd do this to my own family. Ryan chimed in, calling me dramatic, and saying I'd never really been part of the family anyway. Then my mom wrote the line that cut the deepest, that I ruined her birthday, that I always thought I was better than them. I stared at that message for a long time. I thought about the water heater I fixed for her, the fridge I replaced last summer when it died in the middle of a heat wave, the utilities I covered whenever she was short, all the times I showed up without being asked. And there she was, throwing me under the bus to protect the people who laughed, while my niece destroyed something important to me. That's when Lily texted again. She asked if I was free that week, said we needed to talk, said she knew things, stuff they'd been saying, stuff my mom had been saying for years. I stared at her message longer than I should have. Lily and I weren't especially close, but she was one of the few who worked, paid her bills, and never asked me for money. She'd stayed quiet during the blow-up, never piling on. I thought she was staying out of it. Now she was reaching out. Something told me this went deeper than a watch and a glass of soda. Maybe I hadn't even scratched the surface yet. Lily chose a little cafe on Southern and Mill, the kind of place that plays soft jazz and pretends to care about latte art. I hadn't seen her in a long time, not since a baby shower where everyone else asked me about work and then joked about how lucky Ryan was to have me around. She hugged me like we hadn't missed a beat and sat down without ordering anything. I barely touched my coffee. She didn't waste time easing into it. "I don't think you know how they talk about you when you're not around," she said. I didn't answer. I just watched her, waiting. "They don't call you by your name," Lily continued. "They call you the faucet." I blinked. I actually thought I'd misheard her. She explained it like it was obvious, like it had been a running joke for years. When they want something, they turn you on. When they've had enough, they turn you off. She said it started after I bailed Ryan out of his second round of credit card debt, the one he claimed was medical, but turned out to be a failed crypto investment. I remembered that Thanksgiving. The forced smiles, the toast to family loyalty, me covering the bill. Lily kept going, voice steady but careful. "Your mom tells people you owe her. She says you're the reason she had to give up everything, that you were a mistake that needed constant cleanup." I laughed, but it came out bitter and wrong. She never said that to my face. Lily nodded and reached for her phone. "I know. That's why I didn't know if I should tell you." She slid it across the table. It was a photo of an old letter, yellowed and folded too many times, dated January 1991, 2 months before I was born. The man who wrote it was named Howard. He was leaving. He said he wasn't going to raise a child that wasn't his. He wished her well. That was it. I read it twice before it registered. Lily pulled out another envelope. Inside was a photo of my mom, pregnant, standing next to a man who looked like an older version of me. Same eyes, same nose. On the back, in faint pen, it said, "Howard, Fall 1990. Pieces of my childhood clicked into place all at once. My dad never attending school plays, never showing up to parent-teacher nights. I'd always told myself he was just emotionally distant. Turns out I wasn't his daughter, not really, and apparently most of the family had known. Lily watched me carefully. "Your mom tells people you should be grateful. She says she kept you, that your career is basically her gift, that if she hadn't made that choice, you'd have nothing." I stared at my coffee like it might explain something. All those years of paying for their lives, the SUV, the groceries, the tuition, the vacations, the emergencies, the holidays. And the entire time, I wasn't family. I was leverage. Lily hesitated, then added one more thing. "Ryan said something last year. He laughed when he said it, but no one disagreed. He said you were lucky they even let you be involved. That mom only kept you around because you were useful." We didn't hug goodbye, we just walked to our cars in silence. That night, I went home and opened the box with the necklace my mom gave me last Christmas. She'd called it an heirloom, made a show of passing it down. I'd worn it out of guilt. I put it back in the box, no note, just a return address, and mailed it the next morning. The calls started again. I didn't answer. Then the SUV got towed. Lily filmed it from her car down the street. Ryan stood barefoot in gym shorts, yelling while the neighbors watched. Tiffany cried. Lily sent me the video with 2 words, Phase 1. The group chat exploded. Lily dropped receipts, screenshots of texts asking me to cover preschool tuition, emails begging for rent money, a PayPal transfer from the night my mom's furnace broke. Then one more screenshot, an email exchange between my mom and Ryan from last year. I'm fine taking her money as long as she keeps her mouth shut. Don't provoke her. Just keep her useful. I read that 3 times. That same day, the bank called. Someone had tried to access one of my accounts. Wrong passwords, multiple attempts. I locked everything down and froze my credit. They weren't just panicking, they were scrambling. That's when Lily called again, breathless. There's more, she said. Something about Grandma's will. Something you were supposed to get. I felt something shift. This wasn't just about money anymore. This was about everything they'd taken without telling me. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was upset, but because my mind kept arranging memories into a new order that finally made sense. Lily called me again in the morning and told me what she'd overheard, a hushed conversation between my mom and Aunt Marlene, the kind that stops when someone walks into the room. They weren't just angry about the money stopping, they were scared. There was something else I didn't know yet, something tied to my grandmother's estate. Apparently, I'd been left something significant, and my mom handled the paperwork. She told everyone I didn't want to be involved, that I'd refused it. Lily didn't know exactly what it was, only that it wasn't cash and that it was quietly divided among Ryan and a few others without my knowledge. I didn't confront anyone. I didn't ask questions in the group chat or demand explanations. I called the law office that handled my grandmother's estate and asked for the original will, the version signed before her last hospitalization. They said it would take a couple of days. When the email finally came through, I opened it slowly, scrolling past the legal language until I saw my name. Rebecca, the parcel of land in Pack, Arizona. The cabin built in 1978. A note in my grandmother's handwriting about summers we spent there, and her hope that I'd find peace in it when I needed to. I had to sit down. I remembered the porch, the smell of pine, the way she'd let me stay up late and tell stories while everyone else slept. After she got sick, those trips stopped. After she died, the cabin vanished from conversation entirely. It didn't vanish. It was taken. A quick title search confirmed what Lily suspected. 6 months after my grandmother passed, the deed was transferred to Ryan's name. The signature belonged to my mother, executed under a medical power of attorney that expired the moment my grandmother died. 3 days later, it was filed anyway, with a statement claiming I had refused my inheritance. My lawyer didn't sugarcoat it. It wasn't just unethical, it was illegal. Fraud, forgery. I asked what could be done. He asked if I was ready to make noise. I said yes. We filed quietly. No warnings, no dramatic emails, a formal claim to reverse the transfer, and a request for a criminal investigation into how it was processed. Notices went out to Ryan and my mom. Within 24 hours, I had 10 missed calls, then silence, then a knock at my door. My father stood on the porch looking smaller than I'd ever seen him, panic edging his voice. He said I didn't understand what this would do. I told him he should have thought about that when he gave away what was mine. I closed the door. The next message I got from Ryan was different from the rest. No insults, no threats, just this. We didn't think you'd actually fight back. That's when I knew. They weren't afraid of losing money. They were afraid of losing control. Lily sent me a voice memo later that night from a group call she'd been added to by mistake. My mom said, "If Rebecca takes the cabin, it validates everything. The car, the money, the way we treated her. We can't let that happen." Tiffany asked what they should do. My mom said, "We make her the villain." It was too late. I had the documents, the timelines, the recordings. For the first time in my life, they were the ones waiting to see what I would do next. 2 months passed in a strange, deliberate quiet. The title was corrected. The fraud was reported. The state opened an investigation. I drove up to Pack one weekend and unlocked the cabin myself. Dust, pine, old light through familiar windows. The porch sagged a little. The paint peeled. It was still standing. I stood there and didn't say anything. This was mine again. Not because someone allowed it, because I took it back. The family cracked along its fault lines after that. Ryan and Tiffany barely spoke. Her mother pulled her own financial support. They were late on rent. My mom sent a letter asking for closure without apologizing. I didn't reply. I wrote a will. I set up a trust for girls aging out of foster care in Arizona. The land behind the cabin, nearly 2 acres, went up for sale. The buyers wanted to build a retreat for women recovering from abusive homes. We met, we talked, we agreed. I asked for one thing, a bench in the garden. No plaque, just a place to sit. The SUV was gone. The accounts were locked, the will corrected. The rope that kept me useful snapped for good. And when the fear finally drained out of the house I grew up in, there was nothing left for them to hold. The fallout didn't arrive all at once. It crept in, day by day, like water finding cracks in a wall they thought was solid. With the SUV gone and the cabin no longer something they could quietly claim, the family's balance shifted in ways they couldn't hide from each other. Lily kept me updated without drama, just facts. Ryan started blaming Tiffany for pushing too hard. Tiffany blamed Ryan for humiliating the family and dragging them into something they couldn't control. Her mother, who'd helped cover their shortfalls more than once, pulled back completely once she learned the car was repossessed. Suddenly there were rent payments to juggle, daycare to renegotiate, and no vehicle to shuffle excuses between. My mom tried a different angle. She sent a typed letter, formal and careful, asking for closure. She wrote about mistakes being made on all sides and hoped we could move past resentment for the sake of family unity. There was no apology, just an invitation to forget. I didn't respond. Closure doesn't come from pretending nothing happened, and unity built on silence isn't unity at all. The pressure escalated in quieter ways. Someone tried to reset passwords on an old shared account tied to my name. The bank flagged it and called me. I locked everything down, froze my credit, and changed every access point I could think of. The realization hit me then that they weren't just panicking about money. They were afraid of losing the story they told themselves, the one where I stayed useful and quiet. Control was slipping, and they didn't know how to exist without it. Tiffany posted something vague and bitter on social media about generosity with strings attached and people with hearts full of ice. The comments flooded in, most agreeing blindly, until Lily replied with a single sentence asking why asking for accountability counted as cruelty. 10 minutes later, the post disappeared. The private messages started after that, accusations aimed at Lily for turning on her own family. She didn't back down. She posted screenshots, preschool tuition requests, late-night rent pleas, transfers dated and timed, the faucet exposed. My dad broke his silence late one night. He texted me that I was tearing the family apart and hoped it was worth it. I stared at the message for a long time and felt something unexpected. Calm. I wasn't tearing anything apart. I'd simply stopped holding it together with my money and my silence. When one thread is pulled and everything unravels, the problem was never the thread. Ryan tried once more, differently this time. No insults, no demands. He wrote that they hadn't believed I'd actually fight back. That sentence told me everything. They hadn't expected resistance because they'd never needed it before. The system worked too well as long as I stayed in my place. The next few weeks were quiet in a way that felt intentional, like they were regrouping, deciding which version of the story might still work. It didn't matter. The cabin title was corrected. The investigation was open. The payments were gone. Whatever leverage they thought they had was already spent. I realized then that control doesn't collapse with a bang. It dissolves when it's no longer fed. And I had finally stopped feeding it. 6 months after I shut the door for good, the silence stopped feeling tense and started feeling earned. The mornings in Pack were cooler than Tempe, the light sharper, the kind that makes dust look honest instead of dirty. I drove up to the cabin more often than I told anyone, sometimes just for a day, sometimes for a weekend, unlocking the door and letting the quiet settle around me like a coat that finally fit. The place was rough in small ways, a porch rail that needed fixing, a window that stuck, but it held. So did I. The retreat center on the back lot broke ground quietly. No ribbon cutting, no press, Just a crew clearing brush and setting stakes while the wind moved through the pines. They called it Marigold House, after the wildflowers that grew along the edge of the property, stubborn and bright. I asked for one thing only, a bench in the garden. No plaque, no name, just a place to sit. They agreed. I helped clear brush one Saturday and came home with dirt under my nails and a sunburn on my neck, more grounded than I'd felt in years. Down in Tempe, the echoes of the old life kept fading. Ryan sent one email with the subject line Bridge. He wrote about humility and therapy and working through things. He mentioned moving in with Tiffany's cousin in Chandler and trying to reset. He asked if there was a way back. I didn't reply. A week later, a Venmo request popped up for $100 labeled gas. I didn't block him. I let it expire. That felt truer than any argument. Tiffany didn't reach out at all. Lily showed me screenshots of her posting about toxic relatives and energy vampires, selling cheap face masks with captions about healing vibes. It would have been funny if it hadn't been so familiar. My mom went silent. Not a text, not a letter, no passive subject lines, just nothing. I think she finally understood there was no angle left to try. I cleaned my life the way you clean a house after a storm. Slowly, thoroughly, I updated emergency contacts, closed shared accounts, changed passwords I didn't even remember creating. I upgraded my car after driving the same one for a decade because I was always budgeting for someone else's crisis. I bought a real dining table instead of a folding one and hosted dinners for people who never asked me for anything but showed up anyway. Lily was one of them. She came over every few weeks with wine and gossip. Once she brought a novelty kitchen faucet that made a pouring sound when you pressed the handle. We laughed until we cried. I kept it on the windowsill. It didn't mock me. It reminded me the faucet was off for good. People warn you that cutting off family will make you lonely. I've never felt lighter. I joined a book club. I started therapy and learned the difference between generosity and obligation. I stopped explaining myself. I stopped earning a seat at tables built on guilt and silence and built my own instead. One evening, sitting on the cabin porch as the light went gold, I thought about the dinner that started all of this, the laugh that told me everything I needed to know. I didn't feel angry anymore. I felt clear. They didn't lose a bank account. They lost the only person who never asked for anything in return. And I gained something better than an apology. I gained a life they can't touch.